tragic remembrance. Sarah wished for a brother's companionship, but Eric's spirit brings a haunting reality. In the veil of night, where shadows whispered secrets too dark for daylight, Sarah awoke to an unsettling silence. Her heart pounded against her chest, a primal reaction to an unexplained dread that crept into her room like a fog. It was then she noticed him, a little boy seated at the edge of her bed, his eyes pools of darkness in the dim light. "Who are you?" Sarah's voice cracked, the words barely escaping her lips. "I'm your brother, Eric," he said, his voice a melody of innocence and something else, something that didn't belong in the night. Sarah's mind raced. She had no brother, only the lingering desire for one she'd harbored as a child, a companion in her lonely games. But wishes don't materialize out of thin air, especially not in the dead of night. "You must be a dream," she whispered, more to herself than to the boy. Eric smiled, but it was a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm not a dream, Sarah. I'm here because you need me." The conversation that followed twisted like a maze, Eric speaking of memories Sarah had no recollection of, painting a picture of a life together that never existed. As the night bled into dawn, Sarah was left exhausted, her mind a battleground between reality and the impossibility of Eric's existence. When morning came, Eric was gone, vanished as if he were indeed just a figment of her imagination. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Sarah's day was a haze of questions with no answers. She scoured family albums, interrogated her parents about the past, but nothing surfaced to validate Eric's claims. The visits continued, each night Eric appearing with stories of their shared childhood, each story more detailed, more compelling. Sarah found herself drawn into his world, a part of her longing for the brother she never had, while another part recoiled in fear from the implications of his presence. With each visit, Eric changed. The innocence in his voice was replaced by an urgency, an intensity that left Sarah's nerves frayed. He spoke of a darkness that was coming, a reckoning that only they could face together. "You need to remember, Sarah," Eric insisted, his eyes burning with a fervor that chilled her to the bone. "Remember what?" Sarah's voice trembled, fear threading through her words. "The truth," Eric replied, his figure beginning to blur, edges fraying into the darkness of her room. It was then that the memories came, not in a gentle flow, but in a torrent that threatened to drown her. She saw herself, younger, playing with Eric, laughing in a sun-drenched yard. But as the memory unfolded, the scene twisted, the light dimming into an ominous gloom. She remembered a fire, wild and uncontrollable, consuming everything in its path, including Eric. The truth crashed into her like a wave, leaving her gasping for air. Eric had been real, a twin brother lost in a tragic accident, a memory her mind had sealed away in a desperate attempt to protect itself. But with the truth revealed, the nature of Eric's visits took a sinister turn. No longer the brother she longed for, he became a harbinger of vengeance, his presence a constant reminder of the guilt she carried for surviving when he did not. "You brought me back, Sarah." Eric's voice was a whisper, but it bore the weight of 1,000 accusations. And now, we're bound together, forever. The realization dawned on her, a horrifying clarity. Eric's return wasn't a miracle. It was a curse, one born of her own subconscious desire, twisted into a dark reality. As the days passed, Sarah's life unraveled, the boundary between the living and the dead blurring, until she could no longer distinguish where one ended and the other began. Eric's presence became constant, a shadow that lingered at the edge of her vision, a voice that whispered in the silence. Desperate to escape the nightmare, Sarah sought out a medium, a bridge between the worlds of the living and the dead. The seance was a cacophony of voices, but above them all, Eric's voice rang clear, filled with rage and pain. "You can't leave me, Sarah. We're bound by blood. By death, he snarled, the air around them crackling with his fury. The medium, a woman of considerable power, struggled against Eric's will. There's only one way to sever the bond, she gasped, her voice strained. Sarah must confront the tragedy, accept it, and let Eric go. The room chilled, a cold so deep it seeped into Sarah's bones. She knew what she had to do. Gathering every ounce of strength, she faced Eric, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Eric. I'm so sorry. But you need to find peace. You need to let me live. The words were a plea, a prayer to whatever forces governed the thin veil between life and death. Eric's figure trembled, the air vibrating with his anger and sorrow. And then, with a final heart-wrenching scream, he vanished. The aftermath was a silence so profound, it felt like a new beginning. Sarah was left alone, the weight of her brother's presence lifted, leaving a void filled with sorrow and relief. In the days that followed, Sarah rebuilt her life, her experience with Eric, a shadow that followed her, a reminder of the thin line between love and obsession, life and death. She learned to live with her grief, accepting it not as a chain that bound her to the past, but as a bridge to the future, a future where Eric's memory lived on, not as a haunting specter, but as a beloved brother, cherished and remembered. And in that acceptance, Sarah found not just peace, but a strength she never knew she possessed, a strength born from the darkest depths of fear and love, a testament to the unbreakable bond between siblings, even in the face of death.